distinguished judges, honorable students and participants, good evening. We are here proudly representing National Chengchi University, and here with me today we have these three beautiful ladies.
I'm Alice Shang.
Hi, I'm Sophia from Accounting Department.
And I'm Tingatan from Finance background.
And I'm Antonio Bryman from Business background. So first, let's take a look at today's agenda. So first, we will start by a case introduction, briefly describing what the case was talking about, and then we will move towards our analysis and our action plans. Last but not least, we will do some risk analysis and some possible responses, followed by our conclusions and of course the Q&A time. So let's see a little bit what the case was about. So we can see that KFC China first entered the Chinese market in Beijing in 1987 when they opened their first outlet in Beijing. We can see that KFC China, its position is very clear, and they consider themselves as a premium fast food restaurant chain, and they also symbolize the American lifestyle. Last but not least, we can see that it targets middle-class consumers. And also the case talks about something very interesting, about some events that happened that made KFC's brand image really go down. So first we have in 2003 the SARS, which is the severe acute respiratory syndrome. Then in 2004 there was a national bird flu which affected the supply chain of KFC by affecting its raw material, which is chicken. And then in 2005 there was another scandal called the Sudan red, which is a red food causing cancer that was found also in the chicken that supplied to KFC. And also in 2012 there was another scandal again, and this time a lot of the suppliers for KFC, they were using growth hormones and also toxic drugs in order to make the chickens bigger in less time. And last but not least, in 2013 there was a national H7N9 bird flu in China. So as we can see, the history of KFC is not very nice in China because of what's happening. And now let's look at what's happening with the brand image. So of course we all know that China is very famous for having their own social media. Social media is something very important in China. We have the Chinese version of Twitter, we have the Chinese version of Facebook, we have the Chinese version of Google, pretty much we have the Chinese version of everything. Now we can see that, of course, in China when a scandal happens, you have Chinese media attention. You have massive coverage which makes the news available to all general audiences and public. And also the social media, consumers use online platforms to comment about it and also damaging their brand image and their reputation. And you also have scandals. They were national level scandals, especially because we're talking about KFC, which is a multinational corporation in China. And last but not least, about the supply chain, which of course the scandals were related to the KFC supply chain. So now for the second part, let's move to our analysis.
Thank you, Antonio, for the introduction on the case. And now, let's take a look at where KFC is facing in the environment and what are some of the challenges they are now facing and how are they going to deal with it. Okay, first I'll use the 5 force analysis to take a look at the industry. Let's start from the middle of the competition part. I think it is a highly competitive environment for KFC to strive in China because of all the local restaurants and some local chicken products, and also some foreign big players in the market. For example, McDonald's and Burger Kings. We all know that. And apart from that, the suppliers in this industry has a low concentration of there's low concentration of this poultry industry, which means that we can see in the industry there are only 4 main producers, which is Wan's Food, Charong, Pakistan, Ming, and Han Wei. but all of them, 4 of them, only accounted for less than 10% of market share in this industry. And secondly, most of the other suppliers you can see are the small-scale family-owned farms, which for KFC, as a fast food player, is quite good in this. They have the bargaining power to their suppliers, which what I mean is it. And apart from that, the substitutes, like I just mentioned, there are many other chicken products, foods in this market, and there are many other players, foreign players, international players. So the substitutes are many. And going to the customers part, which we will have a first look later. Actually, the customers they are having a wide choices of products. So for KFC, the customers' bargaining power is quite high. Okay, and moving on to the next part. Okay, let's take a look at the stakeholders here for KFC. Apart from what I just mentioned in the industry, the suppliers and the customers, the entry barrier, and also the competition itself, there are many factors that we identified in this case for the situation that KFC is facing now. First, to bring on to the competition part. Competitors like Asian local chains, Dico's Wanglaxi in China, and also some local quick service restaurants like Kung Fu Catering is existing now. And like just what I mentioned, the McDonald's and Burger Kings, they are existing already. And you can see that for customers, what are really annoying in KFC now is because like what Antonio just mentioned, all the scandals following year by year. For KFC, on the journey to recovery, they are really facing real stress on it. So we can see that from the customer part as well. After the scandal happened, 80% from the online survey, 80% of the customer no longer believe in what KFC is doing and what it is promising them. And 39% of the customers, they have the concern about the antibiotics issue that KFC is dealing with as well. And 33% of the customers, they have concerns about the bird flus as well. So for KFC's, these are all the challenges now. And in the economic part, you can see that China is now facing a downturn of economy. The GDPs for them has been shrinking from double digit to only 7.6% here. You can see from the data from 2013. And apart from the economies, the government, although they have enforced a new law called Food Safety Law after the crisis of the milk, the fake milk. But with the law implemented and with more assessment methods, which are to ensure the safety risk of the industry, they also issue lots of policies to encourage large-scale and better animal production in this industry. And last but not least, for the investors of KFC, they are now having less and less trust to this company in China because of all the risks we just identified, all the scandals we just identified, and also because they are putting too bright the mark on their financial statements. So for investors, after the scandals had outbreak, they felt they can no longer trust in this company. So, facing all of these different kind of challenges and problems and scandals, what is the key problem of KFC and what
Yes.
should it do?
Thank you, Alice. Just like Alice mentioned, we have the risks and threats from outside and also from company itself. It's from outside is like the trend bird flu and the slowdown of the economic trend. From inside is the food safety issues, like antibiotic problem and growth hormone injected in the chicken and to make the chicken grow faster. So and then heavily rely on the local suppliers is also one of the issue because the suppliers are working with local firms. Well, some of the firms they are very small scale and they are not very aware of the hygiene and the food safety. So now the main issue is the supply chain. How KFC are gonna cope with supply chain and are gonna face this problem and overcome these obstacles.
So it's my turn to bring you to the action plan right now. So you know what KFC stands for? It stands for Know Your Farm and Chicken. So our plan is know your farm and chicken. So how to know your farm and also to know your chicken. So first, in the short term, we come up with a solution. Is that as you can see here, the first one is a price quality contract design. It is it means that the farmer to sign a contract with the processor and. As a case mentioned, and now we come up with a solution that the farmer to sign with the contractor, and then at the same time he can receive the shares from the company and also receive the shares from KFC company, so he can enjoy the benefit with the company at the same time. And besides, as you can see here, there will be profit dividend and also new technology to provide to the farmers. So farmers they can advance the technology in breeding the birds and chicken. So it will be very helpful for its quality of chicken. So it can solve the problem of the original of the supplier. And the second plan is that implement a new KFC product quality stamp, because from Taiwan we have 7-Eleven all around, and 7-Eleven is very famous for its fresh food. And fresh food they have a stamp on it, and then the stamp stands for like it has a good quality and it is ensured by the government and also by the supplier. And so that's the idea we come up with from our own experience. We think KFC can learn from this. It will have the stamp on it. So there were two stamps on it. The first one is through the internal examination. The internal examination means that before the chicken is sent to KFC, it needs to be examined by the internal examiner in KFC first. This is the first step. And the second step is that through KFC, if they want to export the product to customer, they will have to another know your farm and chicken this kind of examination method to ensure the quality. And it will be sent as a standard implemented in the United States as a parent company of KFC. So this is a solution we come up with. And the third one is a QR code. Everyone has a smartphone on your hand, so it's very convenient if you use the QR code to identify the product. So by using the QR code on the product, you can use your QR code to find where the chicken is from and is parent bird has a bird flu or not, and where are they from and from which farm, and what's the background of the farmer. So I think we think it will be very helpful in the short term to solve all the food safety problem. And then let's move on to the long term of the solution.
Yes, thank you, Tina, for the short-term action plans. And then we are going to focus on long-term action plan. So KFC can no longer just depend on the suppliers or the local farmers too dependently to the supplier, but has to raise its own KFC standard firm, and also educate the local suppliers and farmers to raise and breed chicken with high quality chicken breeds with scientific breeding method and no need to use antibiotics or no need to use growth hormone. And so we have to educate them, and then we also share the profit with the suppliers. So this is the incentives they're gonna work with us. And also, just like Tina mentioned, we have the KFC stump processors, and with also with inner inspection. So the long-term plan is to have our own standard firm, so that every firm can look up to, and the other firm have to look up and learn from our standard firm. And only the firm who learn from our firm and who reach our standard, we're gonna get the chicken from them. If they are not qualified for them, then we're not gonna work with them anymore in the long run. So this is good because we want to build. We're doing this because we want to build a sustainable cycle, like a good. It's not a virtual cycle; it's a good cycle, because if the suppliers, the processor, the firms, if they're providing good quality and food safety, they have the food and also compliance with the food safety law, then they supply to KFC, and the KFC sell good, tasty and yummy, also safety food to customers, and then KFC and customer will go back to KFC, and KFC will buy the chicken raw material from the supplier. So it's a long term, is a sustainable cycle, and make a long term profit growth and partnership with the local firm also. So it will come from the financial part.
So we can say that the strategy is good to know your farm and your chicken, and it's very important to know your financial statement. So right now, I'll give you some financial forecast for this kind of strategy. So as you can see here, we do a scenario analysis for the next few years. And as you can see, we use a same-store sales force and also the same-store sales to come up with a revenue number. So we expect in the upper part of the size is at the better scenario, and the below part is the the worst scenario if there's not any effect happen of our strategy. So as you can see here, the store will be expanded around 600 stores in China each year in the better scenario. And for the worst scenario, the store will only expand around 300 stores in next few years. But for the same-store sales, it will grow at around 20% if the strategy is good to boost the revenue. But in the worst scenario, the same-store sales will be only grow at around 10%. So this is the scenario analysis of our future forecast. And besides the revenue breakdown, because we also take a look at the revenue breakdown. And so in right now, China only account about 53% of the revenue for KFC group. But in 2016, we expect the revenue breakdown will go to 70%, and the United States will be only account for 70%. So that's the right strategy to focus on China market and also to adapt this kind of strategy. So KFC is very important for China is a very important market for KFC. Yeah. Okay. So but we still have to pay attention to some other issues, and let's take a look at some risks.
And then the risk we're going to face is an unfavorable future experience bird flu. Like, what if bird flu happen again? What if an epidemic syndrome happen again? And we're going to have like beef and pork alternative. We're going to raise this kind of. We're going to have like product expansions for this, and then for the supply chain efficiency, we're going to have our own standard firm that can supply 3 months for the raw material so that they can have time to buffer to respond to this.
Okay.
And now, because our time's up in about 20 seconds, So as conclusion, we have that KFC China needs to care about its supply chain as the main issue right away, and also about a marketing campaign. Now, that was all for today. And if you have questions regarding to our conclusions, you can ask us in our Q&A time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, students from the National Chengchi University. There's now 15 minutes of time for Q&A. Yeah.
You're all Brad.
Ladies first.
Thank you very much. So I have a few questions to ask you, but first to thank you very much for your presentation and the effort that you took to put it together. So well done. One of my questions is how you went about planning your presentation. So putting a business case together is a stressful thing. How did you approach the structure of the plan? Was it a good structure? How did you come up with the idea for that and the presentation?
Well, actually, first, when we did our team in Taiwan, we knew it was a business competition, so we really wanted to have different people coming from different backgrounds in our team. So that is why I majored in business and specialized in marketing. And here, Sophia J. Lawrence in accounting, and we have Tina, who also majors in she majors in finance, and Alice majors in accounting as well. So we have really different backgrounds, and we have different personalities. And to be honest, at the beginning it was maybe hard for us, especially the discussion time, because we had different ideas, especially because, coming from different backgrounds. So it'd be like the accounting majors will say like, let's go for the revenue, and I'll be like, I think brand image is more important.
That's very much like
But then-
real life.
But then at the end we just try to put everything together, and we're happy with the result.
And we watched the videos clip from last year's competition, also from previous year's competition, and also watch the final round finale team. They present really good in a real structured way. So we also learn from them.
And besides, we have some consultants from BCG, but he is our friend, and he just hired by BCG. And what we learned from him is that to learn how to identify the issue and to come up with 5 W is how, is why, how, and what's the issue, how we go on to solve the problem. So we come up with a solution with this kind of presentation in our action plan, like to identify the problem and then to come up with a solution at the end.
And just to wrap up, we also learn from our competitors as well. Like in the first round in the morning, we just see others deliver a really great presentations. So we were impressed, and we work a little bit harder during our analysis.
And we
did further.
and we stole some tips from
We
learned.
learned.
Okay, thank you.
Tina,
Yeah.
you were mentioning what you know in Taiwan, that everything is rubber-proof.
Yeah.
Could you tell me how it's work in Taiwan and what is not done in China?
You mean,
For
first
this
you
case.
but you have to know that 7-Eleven is a convenience store, but it's very famous for its fresh food. So fresh food account around half of the revenue for 7-Eleven. So it's a very important resources for 7-Eleven right now. So to make sure the food safety problem, you have to make customers to get their food, get their food and get satisfied with this kind of product. So they will have their own farm right now, and beforehand they will have the core like what the chicken is from and what you can find it on the website, and you can know who the farmer is and where is it from. So maybe you can make sure that the quality is good because it is selected and the farmers are good. So this is the way it implemented in Taiwan. But for KFC in Taiwan, it doesn't have this kind of quality control right now. But in China, I will have some concern for it because first, China is too big, and the farmer, the supplier is lost across the country. So maybe it will be the issue. But I think if KFC is big enough, it can be has a bargaining power to have to over this supplier, and then to make sure that I want which supplier. So I think it can be implemented in China. Yeah.
compared to China, Taiwan is relatively the customer awareness of the food safety is like earlier than the house for mainland. So the 7-Eleven they adapt this earlier the stand, the food stand, to make people feel safe that their food is fresh, the food is safe to eat it, to digest.
Yeah, also another point I would like to add to what my teammate said is that government plays a very key issue when it comes to food safety. Now in Taiwan, Taiwanese government really plays a key role, and they are the ones that push all the initiatives. And then the consumers, because they really care about food safety, especially because Taiwan we had 2 big scandals a few years ago, also related to food. And after that, the government's regulations are more and more strict. Now what happens in China is that, for example, in the case of KFC, just the fact that KFC has so many outlets in China already proves how great KFC is. Because we all know that entering Chinese market is very difficult. It looks good in pictures, it sounds easy, but it's not. Like the government, if the government says no, it's a no. So there are a lot of regulations, and as a foreign company, you really need to understand not only the culture, but also understand the way they do business there. And in China, the food safety issue is not the main priority for Chinese government right now. Because as we all know, Chinese government is focusing on economic development and political growth. So that's why food safety is important, of course, but it's not in the priorities right now. So if you would, I'd like to take these few seconds to just go through the conclusions. So that is why we said that the supply chain is so important for KFC, because KFC as a foreign company really needs to work with local suppliers and build its network in China, make the network even stronger, especially you have more competitors and the market is being open to so many other companies, that if you really tie those network and relationship with local suppliers, you will have a better chance of doing better business in China as well. And also, you really need to, in the case, for example, mentioned that if KFC was willing to import from the US, and we all know that's costly, very costly, and it's not feasible, because in a business, you only have 2 resources, time and money, and people, 3 actually. So it's very costly. That is why if you have the opportunity to work with local suppliers, you should do that.
Your presentation was cut short, so I didn't think you get an opportunity to really talk about how KFC can really regain consumer confidence again and restore, their brand image. I think that's a key part of this case.
Yes, we come up with a happy farm trip because we're gonna set up a standard KFC farm, and then the people who come to visit our farm can see how we hatch from egg to little chicken to chicken, how we're gonna breed and raise those chicken in a hygiene and in a scientific way. So we're gonna welcome all the customers to come visit us in the farm. So we're gonna, and then second we're gonna educate the local suppliers to have the comply with the safety law, and also have the awareness that we live with the customer. If the customer drop us, if customer turn back on us, we're not gonna survive in the long run. So this is also important. So to conclude this, so the customer will know that we're doing this, the happy farm, to prove these things, and also educate the supplier. So in the long run, I think we're gonna gain the customer trust in the long run.
Let me ask a follow-up question. So you talk about training on food hygiene, food safety. When you had your financials up, you showed revenue growth. But what about the cost of training? What about the cost of having inspectors going to monitor? What do you think the impact for the company's margins will be by implementing your plan?
Yeah, so we just forecast the revenue right now, right? But we think the profit will go down in next few years because you have to spend spend some money in training the people and also to implement this kind of new strategy. So we expect the cost will be higher and like a lot of expenses and also overhead expense. And so the profit margin will be go down in next few years. But we expect because the trust from the customer, the revenue will still go up and the store expansion is expected. So in the next few years, the strategy will to increase the revenue first, and then maybe a few years later, we will go back to focus on the product mix and also to improve the profit margin after that. Yeah. Because we think market share is very important for emerging market because you need to capture the customer first and then to talk about the profit and also to talk about your margin. Yeah.
Also, in order to add a little bit what Tina said, the Kenshin mentioned that in China, now there are a lot of small cooperatives that are willing to sell chicken without any drugs or any hormones, but they don't have buyers. So KFC being so big, they can negotiate with these local suppliers, and because of the amount of chicken KFC sells in China every day, they can access to economies of scale, and which means the cost will be much lower. But going back to your first question about how we're going to let consumers know, first we need to solve the problem internally. Internally there's a supply chain. So no matter what you do in marketing, if your supply chain has another mistake, then everything goes viral and then you will have another scandal. So it's useless unless you fix the internal problem. Once we fix the internal problem of supply chain, we'll do a national marketing campaign. Now this is very important because China's nowadays it's all about social media. So if you have a scandal, it goes viral. Now when you do something good, and especially with local suppliers, you do it with Chinese people, then you also need to use social media to your benefit. And you need to know, you need to communicate with your customers and with your target audience and let them know what your company is doing. And that's the only way you can create brand awareness. So after solving the supply chain, we consider that KFC 100%, we're 100% sure that they must invest an amount in marketing campaign to let the consumers know that we are doing this with local suppliers, we have this food safety issue, to communicate with consumers and also educate them to know that we had these scandals, but it won't happen again.
To deliver further on the marketing part, taking the example from Taiwan, actually the products from 7-Eleven, the convenience store, the biggest player in our market, they are selling products from, like there is a stand for their certain products with stamps from the standard farm, we call it Guanghe farm. So products with these stamps are selling a bit higher. Maybe at first the customer would consider whether to buy it. But I think for our groups, customers are a long-term asset. So we have to keep investing in it, in building our customers' trust. So for KFC, through implementing the strategy of knowing your farm and your customers, to ensure the safety of the food, and to implement the stamp we're thinking about, like KFC stamp, know your farm and customer, to ensure the transparency of these products, the food, the quality. We believe that in the long run, the customers would know and would acknowledge the value of our products, even if it's a bit higher for the price.
So that's all good. I think it makes sense to get the quality assurance in place before you go and market on that. But if we look at going back to again what Brad was saying about your financials, and we hear what you're saying that they're revenue based, but it's going to cost you some money somehow to get there, right? Whether that money is in foregone revenue or whether it's an investment in your own standards farm. So can you just quickly show us through your financials where that investment cost is covered? Have you covered the investment cost?
So what if
So your upfront costs to get the standards farm, the training, all the good things that you're talking about, have you factored those into your numbers, or are they purely just return numbers? No cost numbers.
cost analysis? We haven't
Got an revenue only?
Yeah, we don't
That's okay.
have any.
Okay. Thank you.
Time is up for the Q&A. So this concludes the presentation of the students by the National Chengchi University.